Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jim Welsh, and I am with Payroll4Construction.com. Want to thank everybody for attending today's webinar, how Payroll for Construction can help CPAs better serve their construction clients. Today is a listen-only broadcast webinar. I will open it up for questions at the end, but if you want to, you can type them in right as I move along. Also, this is for CPE credits, so this will go about 55 minutes today. There will be 3 polling questions, kind of beginning, middle, and end, so I'll make sure I give everybody ample time to answer those. That way we can get you guys the CPE credit. So what I'll do is just kind of start today by introducing who we are here at Payroll for Construction and what we do. So Payroll for Construction is an online payroll service that was built exclusively for contractors. So we process payroll in all 50 states. So with contractors, some contractors work in one state. They have employees that live in one state. Other contractors, have employees that live in different states. They have employees that could travel to different states. So whether your client is working in one state or working in multiple states, whether it's in the same day or same week, those are not issues here for us at Payroll for Construction, as we do keep up with tax laws and payroll processing in all 50 states. What makes us a little bit unique here about Payroll for Construction is that we have another company called Foundation Software. Some of you may have heard of that. Some may not. Foundation is a full job cost accounting project management ERP system that was, again, developed over 36 years ago for nothing but construction clients. So a lot of your clients may run a QuickBooks, which is fine. We integrate with QuickBooks and many other accounting systems out there. So you're going to see when I actually dive into the online platform here today that it is parts of Foundation, basically the general ledger, job costing, and payroll module. But I want to make sure everybody knows as I go through this, if you've never worked with us at Foundation or never even heard of it, that's okay. Anybody that goes with our payroll service, we will help integrate that with QuickBooks or whatever accounting system they're on. And we would also provide training for both you, the client, really anybody who plans on interacting within the service. So, we're basically like an ADP or Paychex, where we'll handle paying the employees via check, direct deposit, pay all the city, state, federal taxes, quarterlies, wage garnishments, W-2s. So even though when we get into the actual software, it's going to feel a little bit like software, rest assured that neither you or your client would have to worry about paying the employees and taxes. Those are things that we do here for the client at Payroll for Construction. So some of the things that we see contractors dealing with, and I'm sure you see your clients dealing with this as well, that makes their payroll much more complex than a standard traditional office type payroll, is kind of, again, the multi-state thing where they can travel to different states or even different cities in a given day or week, where taxing rates can change. Multi-locality, again, pretty unique to Ohio, Pennsylvania, some of the states. Not all states have that. But another big focus of ours here is prevailing wage. So the other tricky part with that becomes, similar to the state thing, is that depending on if the employee is working on private jobs or different public works jobs, and even potentially doing different things like from labor to operator to carpenter, those things can, initiate changes. So with us, you can actually control rates by job. So you can set up override tables on the actual job record so that, your clients don't have to worry about manually changing rates, because that's time consuming and it just leaves a lot of room for error. So when we get into the software, I'll show you on how we can build prevailing wage scale tables or union rate tables that can be attached to the job. So there's a lot of things in our system that you can control by job. Fringe calculations, whether they're a union contractor and there's a dedicated schedule of deductions and fringes that, must be tracked. We'll kind of dive into how we can set that up, and we can track all of that stuff for the client as well. Prevailing wage fringe reduction factor. So what that's pertaining to is that, if they're a non-union contractor and dealing with prevailing wage, a lot of these contractors are already offering things like PTO or health or 401k match, where they have the ability to kind of take credit for that or back that out of the prevailing wage fringe. We just see a lot of contractors not doing it because, again, they always want to make sure they meet the scale. They never want to go under, but at the same time, they shouldn't be overpaying either. So those are things that, if you don't have the right system, it's just a dangerous game to play, and it's very time consuming, and again, just leaves a lot of room for error. So our system is set up to automate that type of stuff. So we'll cover that as well. Also, workers' compensation. Workers' compensation in construction can change based on, again, the job, what policy they need to use or what they're specifically doing on that job. They may have a lower rate for general labor than when a guy is doing electrical or doing carpentry. So, being able to track that, not just one standard work class, but based on what the actual employee is doing, so that, again, similar to prevailing wage, they're never over or underpaying, and they're not spending hours upon days to get this to track correctly and report correctly as well. Okay. Construction specific reporting. This is one of the biggest things that we see clients and CPAs reach out to us about in regards to the most time consuming part of construction payroll. So getting employees paid, taxes paid, things like that, of course, are a huge part of any service. And all services can complete those tasks pretty similar to the next service down the line. When it comes to the reporting aspect, once payroll is processed and the service pays the employees and taxes, that's not the end of payroll for contractors. There's all these compliance reports, certified payroll. Again, depending on where you're working, there are many different formats. So when we actually go into the online service, you're going to see that we don't just have that standard WH347. There are online agencies now like LCP Tracker, or if you got clients in California, the California Department of Industrial Relations has a website you have to go to. So we pride ourselves on not just having one or two canned reports, but agency and state specific reports that will work for each contractor depending on where they are working to be able to automate that process. Things like EEO minority compliance reports, union reporting, those things are key to construction companies, and they're time consuming come the end of the week or month when those things need to be manually filled out. Job labor and burden costing. It's another thing we do a very good job of because our system is powered by parts of a full job cost accounting system. So with that being said, when I work with contractors and CPAs, one of the things I like to show them is that make sure that not only they're job costing, but make sure that they're capturing everything. So that burden cost, when somebody says, hey, I have an employee who makes $20 an hour and they work 10 hours on job one, it's simple enough to take 20 times 10 and code $200 to that job. However, if they've guesstimated some percentage or are manually figuring out what the FICA, FUTA, SUTA, workers' comp, fringe benefits that they pay, those costs, if they're being guesstimated or manually figured out, again, they're just not accurate and it's time consuming. So when we get into our labor reporting of this, you'll be able to see we can actually tell your client that $20 an hour employee actually costs them $31.26 an hour when you start adding in all those other items. Okay. We also handle the traditional items. So when I'm doing one-on-one demos with CPAs or even a client, a lot of my focus is on those two earlier slides because those are the things that keep contractors, locked at their desk and taking up that time. But I also assure them that, the checks, the direct deposits, the taxes, the quarterlies, the W-2s, the 1095 Affordable Care Act stuff, if they meet that threshold of 50 or more full-time employees. We do handle all of those items as well. A few other things that make us different is that we integrate with QuickBooks and other accounting programs. Why we label it other accounting programs is there's just so many out there. And usually when you get into your higher end Sages or even your Viewpoints and stuff like that, usually each client set up a little bit differently. So we like to customize those files specifically to each individual client so that we don't break any part of their general accounting or their job costing and things like that. Our only focus is construction. A lot of times I get asked the question, hey, Jim, if I sign up with you and go with you, Am I going to have one dedicated support rep? And when I tell them, well, up front, you'll have a trainer that works with you for the first couple of months. So you'll have that one person, but eventually you'll go over to our general support. There's a little bit of panic, a little bit of fear there because they've been through that and they don't like that, or they've had a dedicated support rep, and when that support rep is on vacation, leaves the company for whatever reason, all of a sudden their support, bottoms out because most other companies have a small handful of construction clients. So the next person in line to support that client, they just don't know anything about construction. So it's almost back to the drawing board where you or the client is having to teach the service why things work a certain way or why it's important that they're able to track this or get reports for certain things. With us, our support is all homegrown. Everybody's a direct employee for the company. Nothing is outsourced. And every single one of them supports nothing but, union, government, prevailing wage, multi-state, job costing construction clients. So that's how we can, keep people from waiting long periods of time or dealing with people that just don't understand how construction payroll works. So with us, we're open 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday. So even our West Coast clients, that's 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. So when you call in, they always deal with a live receptionist who works directly for us to see how urgent the call is, what the issue is, so we can prioritize these calls and make sure we're taking very good care of these clients. They can import time to us, so we'll, in a few minutes here, get into the actual online portal where basically time can be entered. This is construction. We're behind the times when it comes to technology, as though we are starting to catch up, and we're starting to see that here as a company at Payroll4Construction. Sometimes it's hard to get people in the field to use mobile technology. So while we have our own mobile application, we also work with many different providers and vendors out there. So if they're on an application and they like it and it can export that time to Excel, text, or CSV, they can upload that time directly to us. Some people use Excel spreadsheets that can be uploaded to us as well. So there's many different ways that you or the client can report the time to us here at Payroll4Construction. This is a web-based program, so any computer with internet access. A lot of CPAs like to log in, get copies of the 940, 941s, or depending on how hands-on you are with the client and their payroll, they like to be able to go in there and get a report or see information. So both you and the client or multiple people on the client's end can be in there at any time, and it's not going to, disturb anything or give you problems accessing this at any time. Also, talking technology in the construction industry, we're seeing more and more companies being able to get people on direct deposit, whereas, a few years ago, most of the industry was still paper checks. That's what the guys and gals in the field are used to and they like. So with that, instead of having to, you got all these crews spread out amongst job sites. Some of the companies we work with, they do work locally. So, each end of the day, guys and gals are coming back to the shop, so it's easy to disperse those checks or those direct deposit stubs. But, more commonly, what you end up seeing is that they're spread amongst job sites all across the state, multiple states, as I discussed, and it's difficult to bundle these things up and get them out to the correct job site. So we do have a nice little portal where almost as if the stub's emailed to the employee, so they can kind of self-service and get their pay stubs whenever they want. If they lost one and they want to look back or they need some type of earning statement for a loan. Again, our goal here at Payroll4Construction is to keep the office moving and not spending, an inordinate amount of time on payroll and getting employees information as they need it. So how this is going to work, and we're going to kind of go through this here in just a couple of minutes. We're going to go through, hey, you log in online. I've already done that step when we get in here, but you get your time cards in, again, via entering it, mobile app, uploading it. They're going to be able to review it. You're going to see there's a lot of ability here to see payroll both before and after. I mean, you're relying on field employees to pass you along accurate information in a timely fashion. And unfortunately, in this industry, that just doesn't happen all the time. So giving them still that ability to see this stuff, make edits, changes, is key. And then if there's mistakes after payroll, we'll discuss kind of how that works. But we know that happens as well. And then they submit the payroll. Then all the compliance reporting's done. They can print, sign, and send them when they need them. Paying the employees, the taxes, all that's done by us. So once we have a client set up, it's a pretty simplistic process to get us the payroll compared to probably what they're used to doing. Now, at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to launch a polling question here. So I am going to select my question. I am going to launch this question. Okay, so the question is, how many states can Payroll4Construction process payroll in? Answer is 1, 10, 50, or 25. So I will go ahead and give everybody just a couple of minutes to fill that in, or a minute, and then we'll keep moving. Looks like waiting on just a couple more. Again, how many states can Payroll4Construction process payroll in? 1 state, 10 states, all 50 states, or 25 states? Going to give it just a few more seconds here, so if everybody can submit their answer. That way everybody gets their CPE credits. That would be great. Okay, looks like just about everybody's answered here. Again, I'm going to close this poll just to keep things moving. We'll have 2 more of these to get your CPE credit. So, again, if you had not had a chance to answer, if you could go ahead and answer, that'd be great. Okay. All right. We are going to close this poll out and keep moving along. Okay, the correct answer is all 50 states. Again, we have clients in all 50 states. We have the ability to process in all 50. Also, if there are employees living in multiple states or working in multiple states, we can handle that as well. Okay, I'll pop my information back up here again at the end of this. But what we'll do now is we'll actually go into kind of those steps of, all right, you or the client have logged in, again, from any computer with internet access. As I mentioned in the beginning, we have another company called Foundation that you do not have to have any affiliation with. You do not have to buy that software. Again, we can work and integrate with whatever accounting system they're on. But this here is where we carved out those pieces of Foundation because we saw there was a need in the market for companies that just aren't ready to switch, or Foundation could be maybe overkill. You know, maybe a smaller company where QuickBooks works well for them in all facets except for, you know, the complex construction payroll portion of it. So this is where you or the client would be interacting. So let's start kind of in the beginning of payroll maintenance. Now, there is a whole onboarding, training, setup, testing process to this that takes roughly 4 to 6 weeks. Again, depends on the client's needs and size of the client. That's all individual to each client. But we are very hands-on with the setup, training, and testing because it is the only way you or a client will be successful. So we will help handle that. So in the beginning, union prevailing wage. This is, again, where even though an employee may be set to make $20 an hour, as they get these jobs, they can forward us over the rates and the fringe schedule. Now, we don't pretend to know every rate for every union and every job across the country, but whether they're union, we can build the union scale, the classifications, the rates. We have these cool effective dates so we can roll these over. Union, they just give you a date. They say, let's pretend June 1st, the rates change. A lot of times that falls midweek, and then you're stuck doing 2 payrolls, 2 paychecks, all this stuff. So with us, we actually have the ability to, ahead of time, schedule it for June 1st, and that week when they're either inputting the payroll or uploading it, it'll use the old rates for, let's say, Monday, Tuesday, the new rates for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday moving forward, and it will timestamp that on the employee's paycheck, on the certified payroll, the union reports, because as much as we want to help and take some shortcuts where we can, we got to make sure this stuff's very visible so we're not triggering audits or complaints from employees or unions or agencies. Now, if they are a non-union contractor, they may have tables labeled specific to jobs or counties that they're doing prevailing wage work in. This system does not come preloaded with just a bunch of information that we hope works for most clients. We will actually custom set this up to each individual client. So if they have 3 classifications, that's all they'll ever need to see. So here is where we can put that pay rate. Now we can separate that fringe rate out for multiple reasons. Sometimes they're putting it into some benefit plan. Sometimes they're paying it to the employee in their paycheck where it is taxable. But we like to separate it out because usually, at the very least, that fringe is not subject to the 0.5 calculation of overtime. So breaking it out so we're not screwing up the overtime calculations where a client is over or underpaying, we can break that out. These tables you'll see in a second can be connected to jobs. That way, nobody has to worry about, because Brian was working on job 1 Monday, then he went to job 2 on Tuesday, and then he changed work classes halfway through the day. Nobody has to do that math of figuring out what rate should Brian be paid. It will just know based on the job and the work classification. If it's a private job, none of these tables get connected to it, so it knows to pull whatever the rate of pay in Brian's record is for the hours on that job. So we know that there's a mix of public and private work being done for a lot of these companies out there. Now the deduction fringes here. This here again could depend on, is the client union or are they non-union? If they're union, there's going to be a schedule of deductions and fringes that are handed forth by said union. So these are key first to label deduction versus fringe. Deduction is going to come from that employee out of their paycheck. So when it comes to job costing, it's already been job costed in their gross wages. The fringe portion is, again, the part we need to make sure is a part of that job costing so that we have the full picture in the system so that the client knows the true to the penny cost per hour for that employee and their total job costing for that job. What these are called will be custom set up for each individual client, each individual union, how they calculate. Hours worked, meaning it isn't subject to that 0.5 calculation. Hours paid means it is. So we do a great job of reading these agreements, understanding them, so any frustration you've had in dealing with some of these other services, where you're trying to explain how something works, why it works, that kind of goes away with us because we do this all day, every day. What it calculates at, how it's taxed, if there's limits, and then being able to roll this over as well. Now, if it's non-union, again, for an electrician on prevailing wage job or county 3, it might just be a fringe that is taxed because it is going to the employee in their paycheck. If they do put it into some type of benefit group, whether it goes into one bucket or multiple buckets, that's okay. And then also, if they are doing that fringe reduction or they do want to take credit for benefits they already pay and offer, even though I may have this table on a job and I may send 3 electricians to that job, what each electrician gets paid in regards to the fringe portion could be completely different because in the employee's record, there's actually a spot for that reduction factor. So these tables are key, again, to be able to schedule the jobs, to override what union territory the job's in, or to override what the rate schedule is for these prevailing wage or government jobs so that as the time's input, the system's handling those changes. Now, workers' compensation. We'll set up workers' comp for, again, 2 reasons. One is for we want to be able to provide them a report for audit and payment purpose. The other reason we want workers' comp in there, again, goes back to job costing. We want that as a part of their cost in their job costing. So though we're not paying things like the union or workers' compensation, we're still setting it up because it's a vital part of payroll and making sure that this stuff is going on reports for audit and payment and is hitting that job cost reporting. Now, employees, we'll just spend a minute or two here. When I go into an employee's record, you'll see that there's quite a bit of stuff they can track. Now, we are actually building, currently, should be out first quarter of next year, an HR platform where, again, introducing that technology to contractors where instead of upon Rick onboarding, filling out his or her paperwork, the client having to come in here and put in all of this information, the employee can actually fill out all this documentation online, have a storage center for these documents, copies of driver's license, all that fun stuff. And then this information, as opposed to being entered by hand, would just auto flow to the system. Certain things, of course, they're still going to want to assign, like what department, what work classification, workers' comp class, their rate of pay. Obviously, we don't want employees, selecting their rate of pay upon onboarding. So, but again, shortcutting a lot of this manual entry that takes time. So tracking hire fire information. This is construction. People come, people go, people come back. So even though there's only one spot on the general tab for tracking this, as they're overriding this stuff, it's automatically flowing to the historical tab here. And it's saying who changed it, when they changed it. So that if multiple people are in here, there's no confusion as to who's doing what and when they're doing it. Deductions. Taxes, we're handling all that. I might have an employee that lives in Ohio, but I may on a job record say, hey, this job is in Wisconsin, so that the taxes stay correct based on as these employees are bouncing around. So we can control rates by job, union jurisdiction by job, as well as the state. We can offer to pay child support, alimony, back taxes. So we do offer that like most services. But outside insurances or benefits like health or 401k, we're just tracking that information and providing reports for you and the client to be able to submit to whoever your insurance agency is. There's some additional stuff you can track, OSHA. This is where if it's a non-union contractor and they are already offering benefits on a per pay, per gross, or an hourly basis, we can set that in there so that the system's doing the legwork to make sure that they're not over or underpaying on those fringe benefits for prevailing wage. Employer contributions, just tracking anything you're paying for health or 401k, keeping it a part of job costing and making sure it goes on those reports for you to submit. Check or direct deposit. They can have multiple direct deposit accounts. There's no additional charge for this. So I have one employee, Rick, here. Even if his paycheck goes into 4 accounts, we're still only charging the client one time for that employee. Vacation tracking, whether they have one plan or multiple plans, whether it's based on 1 hour every 40 hours worked or 1 hour every one pay period or just a lump sum of 80 hours one time. And then that can be set to the calendar year, the employee's anniversary date. There can be caps on this stuff like, hey, once the employee accrues 24 hours in a given year, that needs to stop. Those kind of things can all be set up. Recurring, what this is good for is, even though most of my presentations are focused at the toughest part of payroll, the field payroll, of course, every company that comes to us has, an office side of things as well, where the payroll is not as complex. We still handle that. We can automate it so that they don't have to worry about constantly telling the system to pay the 5 salary employees their salary each week. This can be used also for like, hey, this employee, even though they may be field, they get a $50 reimbursement every, first pay of the month, every last pay of the month, every third pay of the month, so we can set that up to automate as well. And then for one-off reimbursements, per diem, stuff like that, that can be done right through the payroll entry for that given week. Affordable Care Act stuff, we can handle that as well. There's even a UDF tab for user-defined fields. So if there's anything that, sometimes that we can track everything but 1 or 2 items, we can use these fields for them to track it and then them to be able to pull reports at any time. Okay. Now, the beginning part of this is we're uploading their employees from Excel. We're setting a lot of this stuff up so that they're not really spending a ton of time in here, very minimal. So what a client that goes with us life looks like each week boils down to three things: jobs, time, and reports. So when I go in here to the job record, you're going to see a lot of fields. It's going to look like you need to fill in, or the client needs to fill in 150 things. The good news is they're just using us for payroll. So 99% of these fields just don't matter. They provide no benefit to you or the client unless they went with our full accounting system. So when we talk, what do they need for a job? It's simply a name or number, customer A, job, 123. Most important part of this or this, with any accounting system, needs to match what they have in their accounting system so that when we import back in, the labor, the burden, the FICA, the FUTA, the SUTA hits that job in QuickBooks or whatever accounting system they're on. If this is a private job, it's not in a different state, there's no prevailing wage, there's no different union stuff, that's all they need. When we start talking overrides, though, this is where I can flag that job as being in a different city or state. This is where I can say I need certified payroll. And one of the most important parts, this is where I can say we need to use prevailing wage, jobber, counties, threes, rates, and fringes. So I'm able to override that right on the job record so that now a job is a job is a job. If you popped in here today to do payroll and had zero clue of what the rates were for job 1 versus 2 versus 3 or what union jurisdiction it was in, that's okay. We can override this stuff right here and say we need to use this job, this union's rates, and we need to use their benefits, or if our rates are higher, can use ours, but kick the benefits to them. So this is where you really can take an additional 10 seconds to label this on the job record, and then the system will automate the taxes, the union, the prevailing wage scale, and it will report that stuff on certified payroll. The other good thing is that we know no matter how perfect you or the client or even our system is, there will be mistakes after payroll. So with that being said, the whole system's retroactive. If I put this job in today and forgot to check that box or nobody told me, you could check that a week, a month, a year in, and every certified would be there from day one, including no work performed. And then if the client calls and says, hey, I've processed payroll, I found out a day later, a week later, a month later that this employee was on the wrong job or the wrong work class or the wrong set of hours, as long as they can identify it, we put it in, it auto updates the entire system, QuickBooks. So when these mistakes happen, we don't pretend that we can just eliminate them, but we can fix them very quickly to keep you and the client moving. So what I'm going to do real quick here is about halfway through we are. So I'm going to open up our second polling question, and then we will give everybody a chance to answer that. Select. Okay, I'll launch this. Okay, let's see here. The question here is where can you override rates and taxing jurisdictions in payroll for construction? The job record, the cost code, or you cannot do this in payroll for construction. Give everybody just a couple minutes to answer. Okay, looks like we just got a couple more. The last one more time is where can you override / control the rates in taxing jurisdictions in payroll for construction, the job record, the cost code, or you cannot do this. Okay, perfect. Everybody got it right. It is the job record. So I'm going to close this out. Okay, we'll continue along. So the next thing the client can do, and again, I'm just going to do an enter time card here. So this can be done through our mobile app or some other mobile app, but just to kind of show you how it all works. So you can select an employee, select the job, select hours. Hours can be split between jobs in a given day. There's no limit to any of this stuff. I have cost code back here. Some clients use it, some don't. If they do, we would move that into more of a logical spot on the time card so they weren't bouncing backwards to here and then back to here. So I can put them on there for 3, say 5, and let's say 10 on this other job. Okay, focus on the rate, union, and tax column. Just again, based on how it's set up, it knows this job was private. So Rick's rate in his record is 15 an hour. It knows this job is prevailing wage job 3, so it has its own specific table there, where as an electrician, he gets $22.50 plus the fringes. This job's in a different union or different prevailing wage territory where there's a different schedule of rates attached to that job. And then if I wanted to switch him or her to a different labor class, upon switching, it will get rid of that rate and pull in the new rate. So it's all about not having to manually manipulate this stuff, because the more you have to, the more room there is for error and the more time consuming it is. Now, we talk overtime. We can build rules per job or per company. We're over 8 in a day or over 40 in a week or overtime, or, you can say Saturday's always time and a half or Sunday's always double time. So some clients like that and just could save this time card as is. And upon checking it here in a second, they would see 2 hours of overtime. Other clients, they don't like that. They're used to doing it themselves. So you could always create a line item here, mark it as 2, and just change the earning type to overtime or double time or vacation. If I mark this as a reimbursement and put in 50, it would know it's $50, not hours. And then it would know not to tax those dollars based on how we set up that code. So we're doing a lot of this setup to make the system work the way the client needs it. So all they're doing is, again, putting in jobs and time. And then before sending it, as I had mentioned kind of during the PowerPoint part of this, there's the ability to check it. So I can check this stuff by employee, where I can see the days, the jobs, the cost codes, the regular, the overtime, the taxing jurisdiction, the rate of pay. If there's a mistake here, whether these were uploaded through our mobile app, pretend these two were and Craig here was entered manually, doesn't matter. These are still blue because you have the ability to drill into them to go right back to that previous screen I was on to change hours or job or work classification. Now, the other good thing with our reports is each one has a criteria page. So if somebody wanted to know how many hours did we have on the Lakewood rec job this week, month, or year, nobody has to add that stuff. They can simply run the report by job, get job totals, and while it looks like the same report, now we're just totaling things by job as opposed to by employee. There's also no date range restriction, so all reports can be ran for a day, a week, a month, a year, or back to the very first day they started with Payroll4Construction. Every report can be printed, PDF, Word, Excel, or CSV as well. Other things they can look at are the dollar side of things. So we basically have 2 levels of checking, and that's proofing, which is just going to look at hours, whether it's by employee or job or both. The other is going to be registers, which are going to look at the dollar side of things. So this is where, if they wanted to see what paychecks were going to look like before we touch payroll, they can. If they wanted to see, did they miss paying anybody, they can check that. If they want to see what their tax liability is, anything they want to see, they can see both before and after payroll. Eventually, they're going to submit the payroll. Upon submitting, we're jumping in do the checks, direct deposits, garnishment, taxes, quarterlies, W-2s. So we are a full payroll service for contractors, but we have a very unique system here that works really well for complex payroll. Now, depending on what system they're on, they can QuickBooks integrate, Sage, they can click a button, upload that data back in. Then they're going to have reports available on our side as well. One of the ones I really want to focus in on here is proving that job costing. So this here lets me know that, well, by employee and by job, my hours, my earnings, my FICA, my FUTA, my SUTA, my workers' comp, general liability, employer contributions. If they're a union, those union fringes that the employer pays would be here. So this here, if we look at Rick makes $15 an hour in my system. So 40 times 15 is 600. But when we add in all the other costs, like I had mentioned in the beginning, it's getting us to that true to the penny cost per employee as well as per job. So job cost reporting is key. I see a lot of contractors say they can't outsource because they'll lose job costing, whereas we're the exact opposite. A lot of them that come to us, not only do they not lose job costing, but they find out that some of the items that they were guesstimating on or not even getting captured in that costing picture are now being captured, tracked for reporting in our system, and pushed back to their accounting system as well. Okay, some of the other reports, workers' compensation. So when I go in here, it depends. Sometimes they just need a class report, just a condensed report by class, the hours, the earnings, the exposure or the cap, the rate, the premium, and what they owe. If somebody, though, now wants to do an audit and they see that they had $536,000 in payroll, but only reported on $495, and they have questions as to why, well, each policy is different. Some, hey, I got my class, I got my employee, I got the earn type. So if there's a cap per class, per employee, or per earning type here, you can break it out. So, vacation, some people aren't exposed at all on vacation or PTO. Overtime showing that, yeah, he earned $63, but I only have to report on 42. You may have office staff or something that just have zero exposure. So could be the owner of the company. Just all depends. So we can set this up for detailed workers' comp reporting, EEO minority compliance reporting. Depending on where they're at, there are different formats. So since we only do this, we can focus on constantly building new formats, putting them in the system as the industry changes. So without going through all of them, very common one is the federal one that, depending on the job, they may need to produce something that breaks down the trade, the class within the trade, male or female, race or ethnicity, to be able to prove that they're meeting whatever the standards or goals for that job were. And then our system can do the reporting so that once payroll's done, they're just printing, signing, and sending these reports. 401k, earning statements, departmental summaries, the standard reporting that you would get with your traditional provider will also be here. But the main focus here is the certified stuff as well. So print versus electronic. If they're in California or some of these other states, they may need to use an LCP tracker or one of these to be able to upload to them. So rather than us give them a piece of paper with all the information they need, but them still having to type it in, with us, they can click this report, hit close, create file now. They would be able to hit yes, and then they'd be able to upload that information directly to the agency they need it for. Certified payroll print, depending on where they're at as well. We don't need any third-party vendors or any bolt-on programs to create this stuff. It's all being done right in here. So as I kind of slowly scroll, there's a lot of paper formats, even though we're seeing a lot of these states start to go online with this, or these agencies. But as you get in here, see, we have every report in there. I'm even a couple versions behind. I got to run an update. So my guess is when I updated my system, if I log back in here, there'd probably be 2 to 3 more certified reports or revised ones or new electronic ones. So we do a very good job of keeping up with this stuff. So this will just do all the reporting for them. Even if they weren't on the job, no work performed, give them that signature or compliance page as well, where they just print, sign, and send this. Now also, I'll come down here a little bit. Time off reporting, Affordable Care Act reporting, we can do that for them. And then even for union contractors, union reporting of the fringes. So I hit report. I can see my company name, my date range, my union, the employees, the hours and totals, the gross and totals, the total into each benefit, and then a nice little summary page here of what you owe that union. If there are multiple unions, they're just going to have multiple reports here for each individual union to send off. These reports also, some people say, well, I don't need the address. I need the whole social, none of the social. I need overtime broken out versus regular hours. So we'll start getting these reports unique to each individual client. And then what we can do is we can just hit save as a default, put it in their quick links menu. So as a CPA, when you log in, you may not have all this job and entry stuff. Maybe that's not what you do at all. You may just have a few reports over here that you want to run. Okay. So somebody actually just popped up a perfect question that I was going to address here. All right. So somebody's asking, are you going to show how you integrate with QuickBooks? So yes, meaning really they're clicking a button. The file is syncing then into QuickBooks with a click of a button. It is journal entry. So again, if there's mistakes, we can reverse that file out and we make corrections on our end and provide them with a new file so they're not in there having to manually touch or manipulate data. But the easiest thing to show you is this report. This is what goes back to QuickBooks, whether it's desktop or online version, no more, no less. So one of the first things we do is we ask you and the client, okay, what are their chart of accounts related to payroll? Do they, in mine, you can see my entire payroll is going to one account. A lot of clients like to break out office versus field versus shop. We can absolutely do that. We just map their accounts. So we don't need to go into their QuickBooks or take over their QuickBooks. We just need their chart of accounts. Moving forward for the job side, jobs do not go from QuickBooks to us, unfortunately, at this time. We are looking into that with a new API we've built. However, currently, how it would work is they put the job as long as it's the same name or number. What will go back to QuickBooks is the labor per job, the FICA per job, the federal unemployment, the state unemployment, union if they're a union company, workers' comp by job, and then as you can see here, fringe benefits. This could be anywhere from the prevailing wage fringe to part of their health or 401k. Some of our clients like that to roll up to one number, just fringe benefit expense. The other stuff I'm paying. Others like it itemized where it's, well, this was for 401k versus health versus prevailing wage fringes. It can be broken out that way as well. The big point here, though, is it does not go back by employee, just no accounting system once the payroll is done outside is going to allow for that. So the only thing I always make the CPA and client aware of is that if you look at your profit and loss, it'll be true to the penny with all your payroll costs, your purchase orders, your subcontracts, material costs will be in there for your total profit and loss. However, if you ever need to dig to that next tier of the employee detail, what can happen here is you go into our system and that one report I showed you here, you got the employee level broken out here. Now, again, recap, certified, union, EEO, job costing, workers' comp reporting, all of these are here at the fingertips. Now, somebody asked, does QuickBooks need to use job numbers? Can it use alpha job names? It can absolutely use alpha job names. So our system can require or will require a job number or at least some 10 up to 10 digit, doesn't have to be 10, some kind of code. A lot of clients that come to us from QuickBooks are like, yeah, but Jim, I don't call that job number 1 or 2 or 5 or 10. That's okay. In our system, on the job record, you will put in some type of alphanumeric number, but that's where that description below can be that customer A : job 1, 2, 3 or job ABC. So you can absolutely use alpha job names and still tie that back to QuickBooks. Okay, I'm going to pop up one last polling question before I open it up for other questions. So let me pop up the last one here. Okay, Payroll4Construction can provide your client with the following reports: certified payroll, union, job costing, none of these reports, or all of these reports. I'll give everybody here a couple minutes to answer. Okay, looks like everybody answered. The question again, Payroll for Construction can provide your client with the following reports: certified union, job costing, none of the reports, all of them. Absolutely, it is all of those reports. So good job, everybody got that one. So we'll close this out, get back to my screen. Okay, so somebody just asked also about cost. Okay, what is the cost for a contractor, equipment, 10 employees? So, you know, really they could kind of use cost codes for equipment. I mean, we do have an equipment module in Foundation that we've flipped on for some contractors. So, you know, most contractors don't get that unless they buy Foundation. That's something that, you know, if we had a personal conversation, we could talk, kind of see what's going on. But basically, costs are, if they're weekly, it's a $45 base fee and $2 per employee. So if they were weekly, 10 employees, 65 bucks roughly a week. We charge 100 per quarter for the quarterlies and 525 per W-2 come year end. I know I'm rattling this off quick. Anybody after this, I'm going to pop my email up again. Anybody can email me and say, Jim, here's their pay frequency, average number of employees. And again, we could potentially talk about that equipment piece. But the biweekly cost is $65 and $2.25, and then there's the 100 per quarter and 525 per W-2. So we're very competitive. I mean, look, of course, there's always a service out there. You can go with QuickBooks, Gusto, you know, stuff like that, where I'm not saying our prices can never be beat, but when you start looking at your ADP, your Paychecks, your larger payroll vendors, we line up with them really well. Most people come to me and say, wow, you're cheaper than them or the same price, but you provide more. So, you know, we're usually not cost prohibitive. Again, it all depends on the needs. If the contractor doesn't need job costing or multi-state or certified or union or any of that stuff, I mean, this becomes a tough sell. You know, it's one of those things where, you know, as I would go through this with them, a lot of it's just not going to apply. So, I mean, more specifically than, hey, we're a payroll service for contractors, we really look for those very complex payrolls where those needs of costing and certified and QuickBooks integration or union. And again, it doesn't have to be all of them. By no means do most of our clients have all of them. But if they have any of those issues going on, it's just tough to do through those other services and in QuickBooks and things like that. You can keep typing in questions. Somebody just asked one about what if a client needs to do a check in-house. They can do that. This is powered by an accounting system. So we get that a lot with terminations or layoff, payoff. Like, hey, I can't, you know, give you a couple days heads up to get this process. I just found out from the field that we're terminating this employee, or we don't need them to come back tomorrow and we got to pay them now. You'd be able to put that in, print a check right there in-house, send it off to the field to pay that employee. And as I mentioned, all of our support's done by us. We use TeamViewer. So when you talk with us, some of these support calls are more of us visually and verbally guiding the client because it's, you know, we're trying to teach them something. Others are, hey, it's payroll day. Something's wrong. I need this fixed immediately. And that's where we can kind of take over the mouse. So we can see the screen, they can see the screen, we can move the mouse, and they can. So everything you do with us, from the time you would do a live one-on-one demo with me that's more tailored to your client and their specific needs, to your trainer, to support, all done internally and all very hands-on because we know that the construction payroll is always changing. So I don't see any more questions. What I'm going to do is pop up one more time. Here's all my contact information. Just ask for Jim Welsh. You know, I'd be happy to put a formal quote together for your specific client. As you run into clients that could need this, never hesitate to reach out to me. I am more than happy to do live one-on-one demos where you can stop me, ask questions, throw specific examples at me, just to make sure that this is going to line up because, you know, we want this to be a long-term solution. Changing payroll, and I tell everybody this, the client, the CPAs, you guys usually know this, but especially the client, as excited as they get for this, if it lines up well for them and they can see the time savings, you know, there's a rough road ahead, meaning changing payroll is never fun, no matter who you go to. There's work to be done on both ends. So we don't want this to be hey, this will work for me for a month or two. We want to make sure this is going to work long-term so that they never have to leave our payroll service and go through a payroll transition again, as I'm sure you don't want to either, because you're hands-on with these clients. You have to put time and attention to this as well. So we don't want you having to go through it or the client. So with that being said, one more chance for any last questions here. We've hit about 57 minutes, so everybody answer the questions correctly. So the CPE credits, you'll get notified of that by our team. So again, I want to thank everybody for attending this. I hope it was helpful. Hopefully it can help you and your clients one day down the road. And it looks like one more question here. Can we then switch from QuickBooks to a full foundation application and carry the payroll work setup over? Absolutely. Again, I don't want anybody coming into this thinking that if you only go with Payroll for Construction and foundation, it's not worth it. I have thousands of clients nationwide that use this with QuickBooks for 5, 10, 15 years, and they never even consider foundation. We have also many of clients that start with Payroll for Construction and one day say, hey, we're at a point where we're ready. We're AIA billing, work in progress reporting, lien waiver tracking, time and material, equipment, project management. They get to that point, and then, the rollover just becomes easier because this right here is already there. We're not going to put you in a whole new system. We're just going to start turning the switches on for AP, AR, time and material, equipment. So you'll just see other modules pop up. So is there still some setup there? Yeah, but you've already tackled the toughest part of any accounting change is payroll because it connects to the rest of it. So if you did one day want to switch to foundation, you're ahead of the game in regards to somebody who just says, hey, I'm making the full switch right now from scratch. You'll already have a database with info. So, yep, all that payroll history will be there. Also, that leads me to one last thing here is payroll history. Any client that comes to us mid-year, we're putting that in. So if a client starts with us at any time, whether they're on QuickBooks or one of the traditional services, we're getting a report that shows everybody's year-to-date earnings, taxes, all that. So most services do that. Some do not. Some have had bad experiences. So I like to let everybody know, if you come over mid-year, none of your employees are getting multiple W-2s. You don't have to wait till January 1st. We take clients live every month except for November and December, unless they're a startup. But November, December just becomes too much historical data for an extra 4 or 8 payroll. So unless somebody's in a real bad situation or has no history, we avoid November and December. But any other month, we'll get all that historical data in so that they have a full year's worth of data and get one W-2. All right. Well, right at the hour mark, I appreciate everybody's time. Again, feel free as more questions pop up or the right situation for a client pops up. Call me, email me anytime. I'm happy to help. Thank you all again so much, and have a great day.